right. Welcome. I am Hayley Poland. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Equity and Student Services in Roanoke City Public Schools. Laurie?
I'm Laurie Seidel. I'm the coordinator for Mindfulness Education for Roanoke City Public Schools. Decca?
My name is Decca Knight. I'm the coordinator for elementary counseling and trauma-informed care for Roanoke City Public Schools, and I'm going to pass it to Jerel.
Hello, my name is Jerel Rhodes. I'm a guidance coordinator at Forest Park Academy in Roanoke City Public Schools.
Well, so glad you all are here with us today. So here in Roanoke City Public Schools, our families are a central part of our caring community. We are aware of the levels of stress that our families are experiencing regarding racial justice, the ongoing COVID pandemic, economic stress and loss, and we've been thinking about the challenges of parenting during these challenging times. So we thought we would get the conversation going. We're going to start out today by talking about self-care. What does that mean?
Well, you know, they say, Hayley, that you can't pour from an empty cup. And I think that really is a great place to start when we begin to think about self-care. And this is especially important right now for parents, guardians, and caregivers, for our families in general. And we always consider those who've been most impacted by the social, the health, and the economic challenges that we're going through at this time. And the pandemic alone has changed life for all of us drastically and in a very short period of time. And it's requiring a level of resilience that we are all being called to uphold and to grow as we go through this challenging time. So when we think about racial justice stress, economic stress, and even the loss that some of our families are enduring right now, this has an impact on all of us individually, as well as an impact on our families. And the stress that parents are feeling right now is also impacting the children.
Part of self-care is building that resilience. Can you describe what resilience means?
Well, you know, resilience, it's a thing where there's an ability to adapt to a situation when you're going through. And usually those situations are situations that are tough times. And it's important that we understand that we need to nurture those times. And we need to really focus in on not only the situation, but the ability to stand strong in the midst of it. You know, what comes to mind when I think of resiliency is a palm tree. You know, it's built for a strong storm. It may bend, but it definitely will not break. And, you know, I even did some research just to think about what is it that was created within that tree that allows it to go all the way to the ground in the midst of a hurricane, but to over time in the next couple of days, stand back strong. I found that within that tree, the way that it's created, it's like a spongy type matter. It's not like any other tree. And it's something that when that tree was grown from the ground up, it was all within. So it's important that we know as parents that you have in you what you need from day one to make it through tough times. Tough times don't last always, but tough people do. So it's important that we understand that. Also, it's important that we think about self-care as we go through. Taking care of yourself is more important than anything else, because if you do not take care of yourself, how can you take care of your children? How can you take care of those that are around you? So the more self-care that you practice, the better off your household will be, the better off your situation will become also.
What are you all doing to take care of yourselves? And do you feel like it's enough?
So I spend a lot of time outside, getting the fresh air, looking at the sunlight, and recently in the snow. All of those experiences really help me to kind of center myself and take care of myself. And really helps me when I get exercise and walk around my neighborhood to get better sleep at night. When it's warmer, being outside, taking care of our garden or hiking, all of those things are rejuvenating to us. And a lot of us are spending a lot of time inside right now, which isn't really healthy. And we need to be outside more, getting that fresh air. Also making sleep a huge part of my routine, and making sure I put that on my calendar to get 7 or 8 hours of sleep. Many of us as parents are working hard at night to get our kids caught up on their schoolwork. And then that means we are only getting a few hours of sleep. And after a few days, that really begins to catch up with us. So really having sleep as part of your self-care routine is really, really important, and trying to get those 7 or 8 hours a night.
Well, Hayley, to answer your question, no, I'm not doing enough. And I'm kind of aware of that as I go day to day, that I'm not. And so, I'm trying to remember to pause and think about what I need in that moment. What does self-care mean to me in that moment? And one of the things that I'm paying particular attention to right now is the amount of time and what I'm sort of taking in with regard to social media, and the amount of news and a lot that's happening in the country, and don't want to ignore that, but at the same time, just to be aware of the impact that that makes on my body and my mental health. And then thinking about, okay, what am I feeding, right now? And how is this making an impact on me? And then making some good choices around that. So, you've heard this term doom scrolling, that many of us, when we should be, for example, making that transition, as Decca was saying, to a peaceful night's sleep, instead of making that transition and taking care of that, we might be doom scrolling, for example. And that's just undermining that self-care time. So I think the second thing I would just add is these transitions, that there are some key transitions in my day. And if I'm aware of those, I can practice self-care during those times, like waking up in the morning. For me, a big one is when I transition from work to home. How am I making that transition? How do I want to arrive to be present for my family? And then, as Decca just pointed out, that peaceful easing into sleep is another huge transition. So those are times when I can practice self-care. I'm going to do them anyway. So.
Yeah, that's great, Laurie. I would say for me, exercising is the key. During the time of the pandemic, it's easy to become so closed in that you get used to just watching Netflix or just laying back and taking it easy. But, I figured out the key for me is just to get out, just to get moving. That's the thing that's going to reduce the stress. That's the thing that's going to reduce the anxiety. This is the thing that changes your mood. I made it a point to go and get a membership. This is the par 3 golf course. I mean, it's been freezing cold out there, but I'm getting my exercise in. I'm getting my golf swing up, but at the same time, I'm walking that course constantly. It allows me to just allow the stress to subside and to roll off just in this situation. Nutrition also at the same time is a key factor, not only for me, but for my household. It's easy just to grab something during a stressful time because you're indoors and you're not outside, getting that fresh air in your lungs and moving around. So not just for me, but for my family, for the kids, keeping them on a specific, I would say eating regimen, because the nutritional factor is large in this time. So the exercising, the eating, the nutrition, I think that's the thing that's really, really played a big part in my household and for me.
Well, Laurie, as our coordinator of mindfulness education, what other tips do you have for self-care?
I think we've really pulled out a lot of them just in this brief discussion that we've had. Jerel was talking about how we need to resource ourselves first, and how that is really an important first step. Making sure that we take the time for our own self-care as parents, guardians, or caretakers of others. And then asking ourselves the question, what does self-care mean for me? Because my self-care plan might be different from Decca's and different from Jerel's and Hayley's. It's not a cookie cutter approach. It's something that comes from within me when I take the time to pause and stop and then think about what I need in this moment, which might be different from other moments. And that self-care is really a practice.
Right.
It's something that I have to choose to do. I have to actually choose to do it. And then I have to create space for it in my life. And that we can all appreciate for ourselves as well as for our families, that it's an ongoing process throughout our whole lifespan, and that our self-care practices can change over time. So those are some of the things that I think we can bring out about self-care. And then specifically to think about the stress that parents, guardians, and caretakers are under right now. You know, we'll talk a little bit more about this in our next series, but, you know, stepping back, taking a break, seeing if there's someone who can support us where we can tap out to get that time that we might need for self-care, choosing not to react and not becoming so reactive, but rather choosing our actions. And we call that around here a purposeful pause. There's purpose behind it. There's a really important reason why I want to pause. And then that we can always take that moment, we can reset, knowing that this powerful stress and emotion is going to move through and it's going to change. It's not a permanent thing. And that we can always begin again, right? Yeah. Taking that time to stop, and then we can begin again.
Thanks for having this conversation about parenting and self-care. These are so many great tips that we can all use. Next time, we're going to talk about changes that many families have encountered during these challenging times.
Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.